This is Confessions of a Recovering Narcissistic. Today we're going to talk some more about possible causes of narcissistic personality disorder. Today I'm going to use an example from a client named John. Much like Fred and Mike we talked about before, John had a rough past. In fact, that's a theme with a lot of people that have narcissistic personality disorder. They either have a past they're running from, the past that it's too painful to talk about. It could be anything from being so poor you're a sharecropper in Indiana and you go through school and you get your degrees on the wall and you want to do everything you can to get rid of your hick past because now you're in finance or now you're in stock trading and you have the nice car and the fancy suit and you do everything you can to uphold that appearance because God forbid somebody figure out that you're actually a hick and everybody back home just, for extra money just sucks corn. And the funny thing is, cropping corn is not a bad profession. Being a farmer is a good profession. Why be ashamed of that? In any event, upholding appearances, especially when it's combined with anger, that can be dangerous. People talk about social media and everybody being so concerned about their appearance. And, that's nothing new. Look at Gen X for a minute. What's the term coined when Gen X was growing up in the 70s and 80s? Latchkey kid? Okay. In the spirit of full disclosure, latchkey kid, which probably was more first came around in World War II. Men were fighting in Europe, men were fighting in Asia, basically to save civilization. And women were back home working and raising families and building planes and building tanks. So a lot of boys and girls grew up without parents, latchkey kids. I get that. But the reality is, those kids that were born, we call them boomers, they had kids. And most of those kids were born in the 70s. And there were lies going around of, oh, sure, both parents can work. Women can have it all. Kids are resilient. They can take it. It's more important, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones, it's more important that you go pursue a career outside of the home. And then a lot of those kids, after school, no one's at home. So they get their own snack. They make their own dinner. Sometimes they even go to bed without saying goodnight to a parent. And then they get up at dark 30 the next day, get on the bus, go back to school and do it all over again, make their own breakfast. And if that's not the most lonely experience, I don't know what is. When you're a kid and you're supposed to be given an example of how to live, but that example's not at home, that's even more painful. And these kids, if they don't have parents to look at, they're going to find something else to look at as an example. And guess what it was? Television and movies. They would adopt a persona of something that they saw in the movies or on TV, and that's how they decided to act. And God help the person that confronted them or said, oh, you're not really like that, or you're not really a hot rod, or whatever. Because in narcissistic personality disorder, there's also a level of insecurity. Dr. Romani points that out. Insecurity is the bedrock of NPD. Finding security in something solid is part of the recovery process. You might do that by going to church, finding religion, accepting Jesus as your savior. You need to find something bigger than yourself. Okay? whether you're a Christian or a pagan or something somewhere in between, let's face it, truth is truth. Much like gravity's truth for everybody, truth is truth, okay? And going to church and reading the Bible, guess what? That does help people. Renewing of your mind does help people. Learning moral values by studying the Bible helps people. Romans chapter 12 talks about the importance of renewing your mind. And whether you're a Christian or not, you have to admit, all actions begin with a thought. And if your thoughts are only about upholding a certain appearance, that can make even the nicest person into a mean person pretty fast, especially if they feel threatened. And yes, I'm sure you can think of, everyone listening to this can think of people in their mind that if, God forbid, you challenge them on something about their persona, they just come unglued. So in other words, the issues with social media and so on, and people adopting a certain persona or upholding a certain image, that's nothing new. In fact, it's at the dawn of time. But it has gotten worse when somebody does not have the security of looking at a mom or a dad, usually the dad for the boy and usually the mom for the girl, on how to behave, what it means to be a woman or a man. There's no example at home because your parents are out working all the time or hobbies all the time, or there's basically if they're not home or preoccupied. Because being an orphan is not just when your parents are dead. The sad truth is, being an orphan can also be your parents are alive, but they neglect their children. And I think that happens more often than not. And I think that is when social media is a cause, because of the parents are so involved in their social media that they neglect their kids. And that's very sad. But this particular client did get help. He was able, through some assignments, was able to learn some ways to get rid of the need for upholding a certain image, become comfortable in who he actually was. And that's where I have hope for anybody listening, that there is hope. Some of the symptoms may always linger a little bit, but isn't that so much better than the opposite? Isn't being a productive member of society and having friends and being able to connect more important than upholding your image? Because if we cannot connect with other people, that's the loneliest feeling. And that's painful. Narcissistic people, they feel their own pain. I mean, the personality disorder, NPD, narcs. Okay, I'll call them narcs. They feel their own pain. They don't feel your pain, but they feel pain. Sociopaths don't feel pain. Martha Stout did a whole book about sociopath. I think it's called The Sociopath Next Door. It's worthwhile reading because some of you think you're around a narcissistic personality disorder. In reality, you're probably around a sociopath. So it's worth differentiating between the two. At least narcs will feel their own pain. And sometimes they might seek help because of it. And God bless you if you do. This is Confessions of a Recovering Narcissistic. My name is Maximus. Thank you very much.